Welcome back. My name is Darren Thomas, and I am the Director of Educational Research Technique. In this particular video, we're going to be looking at how you can compare data, by groups with Python. So let's go ahead and see what we can learn. So we're going to start by loading our libraries. That's going to be our first little goal here. And so let me go ahead and do that. So we're going to be using Seaborn and Matplotlib as our data visualization tools. And the line of code in the middle there, PyDataset, is going to be used for actually pulling our data. That's what we're going to use that for. And so let's go ahead and run these and move to the next step. All right, now for our data preparation is very simple, not a whole lot going on there. We're just going to load a data set called Prestige into an object that we're going to call df, and we're going to take a quick look at it by using the .head method. All right, so here's the data set we're working with. We have in the first column various positions that people might work, government administrator, general managers, etc. And then in the other columns are different measurements of these various positions. So education level, income, I think maybe that's the percent of women in these positions. The prestige level, census, probably more like an identification number, and the type of job, whether it's professional, white collar, or blue collar. That's what that's about. Now, our first way that we're going to compare this data is we're going to compare professionals versus people who are not professionals. So here's our code right here. And so what we're doing here is we're calling on the KDE plot. That's kind of their histogram method right here from Seaborn. And we're telling it inside the DF data set, we're looking for a type that is professional. And then we also want the income. So we're looking at the incomes of people who are professional here. And then we're going to select the argument fill equals true to get a nice little color that shades it. And then we're going to label it professional, right? PROF. Then we do the same thing again, but this time, the only difference is right here where we put the exclamation mark, then the equal sign means does not equal professional, basically, income. So we're pulling all the incomes for people who are not professional. That would be blue collar and white collar workers together. And then we label this non-professional, and of course, we fill it as well. So let's take a look at this. All right, so here we can clearly have two distributions right here that you can clearly see. And you can see that the first one is going to be for our professionals, or excuse me, the blue one is going to be for our professionals. You can see they have way higher salaries and higher overall. And that for the non-professionals, they kind of clump together in a much smaller range here. That's kind of what's happening here. And so that's kind of what you can see here. And the density is much higher. So there's a much narrower range of potential income for non-professionals compared to professionals. That's what's happening there. And so you can see this is one way to compare. So as you look at this visualization might inspire you to decide if you need to do like a t-test or ANOVA to see if the difference is statistically significant, if this was sample data as a way to think about this. Now, we're going to go to our next little trick here, and that is going to be our rug plot, which is kind of more of the same, but it shows you the data in a slightly different way, which can be or cannot be useful. It all depends on the context. All right, so here's our code. This should look highly familiar. It's almost exactly the same as last time. So right here, we're making our histogram again, but we're going to color it green for professionals. Here we color non-professionals red. And what's really unique here now is this rug plot down here. The rug plot puts little ticks inside the histograms to kind of show you where most of the data is at. And so again, for our professionals, we're going to color them green. And then for our non-professionals, we're going to color them red. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right, so what's new here is that we did not shade it because that would block all our little ticks here at the bottom. And so now with the little rug plot ticks at the bottom, you can see the distribution of the data. Now, normally you want to do just one rug plot at a time so that you can kind of see it clearly. So if I were just to comment this out real quick, it will help you to appreciate this a little bit more. Let me just go ahead and do that. Run this again. All right, there we go. So now we can only see the ticks for the professionals. So you can see how they're mostly clumped up right here between 5,000 and 10,000. Again, this can give you insight into whether or not you want to do the t-test or the ANOVA to confirm if there's really a difference here, as an example. And so these little ticks are there so that you can see where most of the values are at within the distribution for people who are professional. Now, again, I can remove this. Well, got to watch out with the white space with Python. There we go, still works. And so then you can see the red right here shows you the distribution. So for the non-professionals, everything is much more clumped together. It appears there may not even be any outliers in this example, whereas with the professionals, you got salaries way out here, far to the right, that may be considered outliers as an example. Now, for our last trick, we're going to look at something called a swarm plot. This is yet another way to capture the shape of your data for the purpose of comparison. So we're going to look at type here. That's going to be on our y-axis, so that's a little bit different. And then education is going to be on our x-axis here. Education, I mean, technically it is a continuous variable, but kind of isn't in this situation. And then the data set right here is DF. The size here is 3, and we're using the swarm plot, method from the Seaborn package. Okay. Then this time for phone, we gave it a title using plt.title. So let's go ahead and see what we learned here. Whoa. Go right here inside. All right. So here's a distribution. So for white collars, you can see their education is often between 9 up until about 13. So, a year or two of college. Blue collar people tend to have much less education. You can see how it drags all the way down almost to 6th grade. And of course, professionals have much more education as to be expected. So this kind of shows you a way where you can compare this time 3 different groups in terms of their education. And so you don't get so much of a shape like a histogram as in the other examples, but you do get an idea of the spread of the data and where the data is at. So this is kind of like rug plots, if you will, without the histogram on top of it, basically. And so which one of these you use all depends on your situation. And again, it gives you insight into whether or not you should continue to confirm what you see with your eyes with various statistical tests. That is one of the main primary drivers behind these different ways of comparing data. So let's go back, review what we've learned, and conclude the video. So in this video, we really looked at some simple ways that you can compare the shape and the distribution of data that you might have when you break it down by various groups. And so we focus here on this first example, looking at a histogram and comparing professionals versus people who are not professionals in terms of their job type, looking at the income as the main driver of this. And so here's our first little example. Then we went a step further, and not only did we run the histogram again, this time without filling it, but we added the rug plot as well to kind of give you an idea of where the data is at inside the distribution. And so here's our picture right here. You see, we clearly have the same histograms as before, but now we added the ticks down below to give you an idea of where the data was at in the actual distribution when we're looking at comparison in terms of income. And last but not least, we went in a slightly different direction for this last one. We took a look at education by job type. And so you can see here by using this swarm plot, we're able to see the spread of the education levels of the different job types within this particular data set. Again, to provide us insights into where there may be differences at. These visuals help you to determine what additional tests you may want to do to try to get a better understanding of what's happening with your data. So I want to thank you again so much for watching and listening to this particular video. My name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Thank you again for watching, and you take care.